has quite simply been my strength and stay all these years. And I and his whole family owe him a debt greater than he would ever claim or we shall ever know.
Being married to the Queen, it seemed to me that my first duty was to serve her in the best way I could.
It was a partnership that lasted for more than 70 years. Philip, Britain's longest-serving consort, always at the Queen's side. A proud man who had to give up his naval career. A man who helped modernise the monarchy. The great outsider with a reputation for bluntness and plain speaking became the steadying hand behind the House of Windsor.
Prince Philip was a remarkably successful consort to the Queen. As far as duty was concerned, never put a foot wrong, was immensely able, conscientious, looked after youth. I think that he's probably the most successful consort there's been.
Born in 1921 on a table at the family villa in Corfu, his title Prince Philip of Greece and Denmark. Like his future wife, he was the great-great-grandchild of Queen Victoria, but he wasn't actually Greek.
He had not a drop of Greek blood in his veins. He was, of course, a Schleswig-Holstein, Sonderburg-Glucksburg, which implies a certain amount of German and Russian blood.
Dartmouth, it was at the Royal Naval College at Dartmouth that the 13-year-old Elizabeth met the young cadet Philip. It was here Louis Mountbatten, Philip's uncle, saw the chance of some matchmaking.
The college was in the grip of an outbreak of mumps. So the two princesses sort of put in isolation, and who was asked to look after them? Well, it was Prince Philip, and that was definitely Mountbatten's instruction. And it was during that time that we're told that Princess Elizabeth became absolutely smitten with her sort of dashing, blonde third cousin.
As a midshipman, he'd taken part in the Battle of Cape Matapan.
During World War II, Philip was mentioned in dispatches. He controlled the searchlights of a destroyer during a battle against the Italian Navy. As war raged, the princess wrote to Philip at sea, and he spent leave at Windsor Castle, but there were formidable obstacles to their courtship.
Philip was seen by the government and the royal household as a rather dangerous influence. They thought he was too German, they thought he was too independent, and there was a lot of snobbery about him not having a fixed abode or a home, not having much money. They didn't see him as someone who'd fought bravely on the Allied side. They didn't see him as someone who was devoted to the monarchy.
When the war was over, they both attended the wedding of one of Lord Mountbatten's daughters. It seemed they only had eyes for each other. And in the end, Elizabeth's determination to have her man won the day.
In these, the first special studies of the pair since the news of their engagement, it's easy to see the radiant happiness of the princess as she and her very good-looking husband-to-be pose for the cameras in the palace. And then, lucky omen, a sweep stands by just before the bridegroom enters his car.
On the morning of the wedding, Philip was made Duke of Edinburgh. But doubts about him persisted.
Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, was inevitably charmed by Prince Philip. But I think in the early days she did have her reservations about it. His uncle was Earl Mountbatten of Burma, and a lot of people had reservations about Mountbatten. And Prince Philip was rather like a younger version of Dickie Mountbatten. He was go-getting, he was can-do, he was slightly abrasive, and, you know, he picked up the telephone and got things done. And that wasn't quite the way the stiff upper lip British courtiers used to behave.
Into the forecourt of the palace and through the gates comes the gilded coach, 2 centuries old, bearing the young queen to her crown.
At the coronation in 1953, Philip delivered his oath of allegiance to the young queen.
I, Philip, will become your liege man of Lytham limb.
Upon becoming Queen's consort, his children wouldn't even carry his name. The Queen Mother and Prime Minister Winston Churchill insisted it was to remain the House of Windsor, not Mountbatten or Edinburgh. In exasperation, Philip told friends he was nothing but a bloody amoeba.
Most alarming.
The prince threw himself into charity work, 800 organisations in total.
Every man knows his job.
But it was the Duke of Edinburgh's award scheme, launched in 1956, with which he became most associated. 6 million people have won awards, and, as Philip pointed out in his own inimitable style, many have been put on the right path.
Once you've got a soccer hooligan, you've got a soccer hooligan, and somebody else is going to have to try and cure him of that. The purpose of the scheme basically is to try and catch people while they are moderately civilized still and keep them that way.
Despite his achievements, he knew no matter what his successes, his role was always to be a supporting one.
Could you tell me, what is your job in your own mind?
Well, I haven't got one. I'm self-employed.
But surely you must have some clear idea of what role you fulfill in modern society.
Very difficult to answer.
And the role that became his was really kind of the nuts and bolts of organisation of the monarchy, and that became something that Philip was actually very good at. Understanding how the monarchy needed to evolve was the part that he would assume and the role that he would play over the next 7 decades.
He took the leading role in the royal family itself, given the major say in the raising of the children.
Here in Philip, we have almost the first sort of house husband. This is the 1950s. He is the head of the family, even though, of course, the Queen is head of the firm.
But Philip's relationship with Charles was a complicated one. Both men were left devastated in 1979 when their beloved Mountbatten was murdered by the IRA in Ireland.
Here is the stuff of which fairy tales are made.
There were more difficult times to come. The 1980s were the years when the royal soap opera was at its height. At first it seemed like harmless fun, but soon events took a darker turn. And rumour soon became fact, as a book in which Diana had secretly collaborated exploded the myth of the fairy tale marriage. It emerged later that at around this time the Queen and Prince Philip had held a meeting with Charles and Diana to seek to reconcile them. Philip and Diana had even exchanged letters. But there was nothing to be done. The marriage was over. The death of Princess Diana in 1997. Given Philip's aversion to the media, his instinct was to handle the tragedy as a private matter, looking after the young princes, William and Harry, at Balmoral. But Philip played a key part in helping them face up to their public role.
Prince William, come the funeral, was not at all sure whether he wanted to walk in the funeral procession because he was thinking the whole thing had become a great sort of media shenanigans and something perhaps he didn't really want to be a part of. This was interesting about Prince Philip. The night before the funeral, he cut through all that and he took the long view and he said, I think when you're older you would very much regret not walking behind your mother's coffin. And also he said, and I'll walk with you. And I think that's really everything that you need to know about Prince Philip as a grandfather.
But Philip will also perhaps be remembered for his gaffes. In 1986 in China, meeting some Edinburgh University students on a one-year visit, Philip said, if you stay here much longer, you'll all be slitty-eyed. More recently, he surprised some young sea cadets with his frank repartee.
And I just said that I worked in a club, and then he asked, oh, what, a strip club?
But sometimes his sense of humour was delivered more gently.
For this very private of public couples, quite a romantic gesture.
Prince Philip, always energetic, plays polo on Smith's Lawn, Windsor Great Park.
He was a man of action all his life. After giving up polo at 50, he took up with carriage driving, becoming a great champion for the sport.
You idiot!
A crash in his Land Rover near Sandringham in early 2019 served as a reminder that he was still driving at 97.
Sir,
As he became increasingly frail towards the end of his life, he spent more time at the Norfolk estate. Less able to help deal with the turmoil that engulfed the royal family, the scandal of Prince Andrew's closeness to US financier and sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, Harry and Meghan's controversial decision to withdraw from frontline royal duties. Prince Philip will be remembered for being at the Queen's side, supporting her for so long. Here, in his element during the Thames River pageant, to mark the Diamond Jubilee. At the age of 96, the Duke made his last official solo public appearance in August 2017. He had carried out more than 22,200 engagements during his long career of public service. Fittingly, his last as Captain General of the Royal Marines. All were aware of the significance of the event. They sang, "For He's a Jolly Good Fellow," as he waved to the crowds and returned back to Buckingham Palace, his duty to Queen and country done.